Back in April, my dad and I entered our first endurance race at Pacific Raceways. We managed not to break the car, and we had such a great time that we're back on track in June for our second race, which is at a different track, Oregon Raceway Park. Like before, this is an endurance race, with a practice day on Friday and 8 hours of running on both Saturday and Sunday. This again is our car, a mostly stock 1996 Mazda Miata. Remember, the goal here is to finish the most laps overall, not run the fastest single lap. Oregon Raceway Park is a fantastic track, but it's pretty technical, so there's lots for us to learn on our first time out here. There's plenty of elevation change and some off-camber corners, where the track slopes away from the direction of the turn, which reduces the amount of available grip and makes it easier to spin. There are also a few blind sections, where you have to already start turning before you can see where the track actually goes. That said, this track is super fun. There's this sort of half-pipe section on the back stretch, which is just wild to drive, and is probably my favorite bit of track that I've driven so far. Something pretty unique about ORP that keen-eyed viewers may already have noticed is that it's designed to be driven in both directions, clockwise and counterclockwise, which isn't too common for a racetrack. Lucky Dog runs it counterclockwise on the first day of racing, then clockwise on the second day, and it drives really differently in the different directions, so it's effectively two new tracks for us to learn. Another thing about ORP is that it's in the middle of nowhere in a tiny town in Oregon called Grass Valley. The closest gas station is half an hour away, and the closest auto parts store is about an hour away, so hopefully you brought replacement parts for anything you plan on breaking. This remoteness makes racing at ORP a fairly unique experience. People tend to camp right at the track, some in RVs and some in tents. Also, there are some pretty great views of some of the Cascades volcanoes. This is a different racing series than we entered in April. Previously, we raced with 24 Hours of Lemons, and this one is with Lucky Dog Racing League. Like 24 Hours of Lemons, Lucky Dog is also an entry-level endurance racing series, but it doesn't have the $500 cost cap for cars that Lemons does. Instead, Lucky Dog keeps entry affordable and approachable with other rules. One way they do this is by limiting entry to cars from the model year 2006 or older. There were still some pretty fast cars produced before 2006 though, so where in Lemons we were racing the likes of Honda Civics and whatever this Jeep thing is, in Lucky Dog the field is more composed of actual fast cars, like BMWs, Corvettes, and even some Honda Civics. To keep the field closer and the racing safer, Lucky Dog sets a minimum lap time for the whole field. If you drive faster than this lap time, you'll be penalized. The idea here is to keep the overall speed differential between the fastest and slowest cars within reason for safer racing. The final way that Lucky Dog seeks to keep things fair and affordable is by requiring all cars to use the exact same tire, Hankook RS4s. No extremely sticky tires or racing slicks allowed. Like Lemons, Lucky Dog also divides cars into classes A, B, and C, with A being the fastest and C being the slowest. Unlike the Vibes and Bribes-based class assignments in Lemons though, Lucky Dog includes a 1-hour qualifying session at the beginning of the first race day in order to place cars into representative classes based on performance. The Lucky Dog field overall is significantly faster than Lemons. Racing Lemons in April, we were placed in A class, the fastest one, and our car was fast enough to do a good amount of passing. In Lucky Dog though, our lap times were comfortably at the bottom of C class, and in fact we were almost the slowest vehicle at the event, with some cars running 15 to 20 seconds per lap faster than us. The lap itself is only around 2 minutes, so that's pretty significant. The car you just saw pass us is also in C class, just like us. Our fastest lap of the day was a 2 minute 15, and theirs was 2 minutes 2 seconds. So in a bit less than 20 minutes, they passed us on track again. We were a bit surprised at how comparatively slow we were, but as we'll see shortly, outright speed isn't everything. Now, I don't know if you can tell from all the sun, but it was hot out there. The temperature started in the 80s on each day of racing and climbed into the 90s later in the day, even passing 100 degrees on Sunday. Driving a race car is a pretty physical activity, and you get pretty hot over the course of a stint, especially when you're wearing a full race suit and helmet. Fortunately, we came equipped with a driver cooling system. This is basically just a shirt with a tube sewn across the front and back, which connects to a cooler full of ice water. There's an electric pump inside the cooler that circulates the water through.
Oh yeah!
This was an absolute lifesaver, but even running the pump on max power, it still got pretty toasty after a while. On Sunday, the organizers of the race imposed a maximum stint length of 1 hour instead of the usual 2-hour limit to make sure that no one overheated. Over the course of the weekend, we had a few off-pavement adventures, sometimes with some optimistic braking, and at other times just getting on the power a bit too early in some of the off-camber sections of track. Unlike 24 Hours of Lemons though, Lucky Dog won't immediately black flag you for going 4 wheels off track unless it's egregiously bad driving, unsafe, or if it's happening consistently.
Okay, that dust cloud was me.
For most drivers, I think the fact that you're off track in the first place is by itself a good enough indication that what you did was wrong, and that you should avoid doing it in the future. Though, judging by this message from Race Control, it seems like the whole field could have driven a bit better. I personally went off track right here and smacked this curb hard enough that I sort of poked a large hole in our exhaust, which made the car significantly louder towards the end of the first day of racing. We repaired this with some of this JB Weld tape stuff we happened to bring along just in case, and that made the noise tolerable again for the second day of racing. Over the weekend, attrition was pretty high throughout the field. A lot of cars broke. The emphasis here was definitely on the endurance part of endurance racing. Remember that car from before that lapped us in just 20 minutes on track? Yeah, they were way faster than us, but we still ended up ahead of them by 30 laps by the end of the first day. Looking at the timing, it seems they had some sort of issue that they had to spend about 2 hours fixing in the pit lane while we stayed out on track and kept turning slow but fairly consistent laps. I don't mean to single this team out or anything, the point here is just that reliability can beat out speed. Even if you're slow, just staying on track can make a real difference over the course of an entire endurance race. Despite legitimately being almost the slowest car on track looking just at our lap times, we ended up 8th in C-Class on Saturday and 6th in C-Class on Sunday out of 23 cars. Not by being fast, just by being able to drive our silly little car all day long. Also, on Sunday, some teams packed up early and went home because it was a Sunday evening and a multi-hour drive home, so we made up some places that way. But I'm going to choose to ignore that. All in all, it was another successful weekend of racing. We again had no major mechanical issues and got to learn a fun new track. Next up is another Lucky Dog race, this time in Portland. See you then.